So in this video, I'm going to be tackling this mess damage on the paint, Fiesta XR2. But this is certainly as straight as I'm ever going to get it. Hibernating for many years, but now it's back out in action. Rust, rotten. So this tool is absolute junk. I decided I was going to try and butt weld this one in. The last time you saw this thing on the channel, I made an absolute pig's ear of welding up her rear panel. Loads of you guys have been in touch to offer advice since that video. Massive thanks to each and every one of you. I'm confident that I know where I went wrong and that I can and will do better next time I wave my MIG welder at Heidi. Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes and today it's time to explain myself and redeem myself with some more welding on Heidi. So in this video, I'm going to be tackling this mess on Heidi's rear quarters. But before that, let me bring you up to speed with everything else that's been going on, including 3 disasters I had yesterday, 2 of which were to do with Fiesta, my ST170 powered Mark 1 Escort. Fiesta is absolutely filthy at the moment, but if you stand back far enough, she still looks really cool. But if you zoom in to her driver's side front wing, we've got a bit of damage on the paint. Now, I don't know when this occurred. My friend actually noticed it yesterday. I'm kind of grateful that whatever happened there didn't touch the carbon fibre bumper, but yeah, that's going to need to be sorted out. The other disaster is actually something to do with a job I did on this thing about a week ago. If you saw that video, you would have seen that I changed the fuel filters on this thing. There's one here and one in the engine bay. And since I did that job, I took this thing to the Pistons and Paws event, which was, yeah, a good few miles away. And I've been smoking it around since then as well. But what I noticed yesterday is that this pipe here was actually only finger tight. Now I'm pretty sure that I would have nipped it up with a spanner when I changed the filters, because as I say, I've done so much mileage in this thing since then. I'm sure that I would have noticed, you know, my tank getting empty, and I would have noticed it before yesterday. But the only reason I noticed it yesterday was because I noticed how empty the tank was. It's actually really empty now. Gonna have to fill that up before I go home later. Yeah, I basically put 20 quid in this car the day before yesterday, which was when I took this for a test drive after I changed the parts that I did in the last video. And yeah, really didn't expect to have to put fuel in it yesterday, but yeah, it was empty. And I noticed a little dribble of fuel just on this plate, and then that's when I checked this with my fingers, and yeah, it was literally finger tight. So I can only assume that overnight, or whilst I was going on that test drive, the fuel had all leaked out. I do actually have a hole drilled here strategically, just in case the rear lights or anything let water in, it's able to escape. So yeah, I can only assume that all the fuel I put in the day before yesterday had run out overnight. I did give this area a clean, just in case, you know, it has had a load of fuel on it and it might do something to the paint. But yep, that was the second disaster that I've got to reveal. Not the end of the world, but, you know, a bit of money wasted on a load of fuel that potentially didn't go through Esther's ST170 lump. Now, the third disaster actually involves Heidi, so I'll come to that in a minute, because first, let's take a moment to appreciate one of John's fleet, this really cool Mark II Fiesta XR2. John actually bought this off of my friends, the Cougans. Since then, it's had a full respray and a new set of decals. And today, he's messing about with something on the carburettor. This has still got the original CVH lump fitted. And yeah, John likes to keep his cars stock, so it's still got the stock interior and stuff. What a gem. Genuine XR2 Mark II Fiesta. All right, so since the last time you saw Heidi on the channel, I have been cracking on with a bit of filler work. As you can see, got some bits that are thrown in the front panel. They still need to be sanded down properly, and a couple of those bits need a second skim. But I have now managed to get this passenger side rear door looking really straight. This actually ended up having 2 big skims more than I expected, just because when you're sanding things down with the block, it just identifies other areas that aren't dead straight. But this is actually super straight now. But as I've mentioned before in the videos, I'm sure when this goes for paint, and I'm hoping that my good friend Rob is going to be doing that, there probably will be a couple of little bits that need perfecting. But this is certainly as straight as I'm ever going to get it. So yeah, really happy with that. I have also been trying to improve the mess on her rear panel. As you can see, I've thrown in a load of fiberglass filler here just to start making the shapes up properly. This side isn't going to need quite as much fiberglass just because I ended up putting less metal in. From here, that way is still original. Before I started throwing this fiberglass in, I did add some welds in places where it really needed it. And yeah, this is definitely going to look absolutely fine once I've finished plopping it up with fiberglass. All right, so it's about to get really loud around the garages because my other neighbour is going to be running his generator for a little while. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to jump in Esther's cockpit away from the noise and explain where I think I went wrong with the welding on Heidi's rear panel. Now, in hindsight, I definitely should have just bought a repair panel. You can buy the lower rear panel section to save you buying the whole rear panel, which is only about 50 odd quid. But unfortunately, the only listing that I could see for that on eBay wouldn't have been delivered until mid-September, and I didn't want to wait that long. Now, obviously, there's the option to buy a full rear panel and then cut the bottom half off of it. But some would say that that's a waste of time. If you buy a whole rear panel, you may as well put the whole rear panel in. And I kind of didn't want to put a whole rear panel in. Also, I was under the impression that a rear panel was about 200 quid. But I think that's the ones that come with the inner bracing. And at the time, I didn't have 200 quid. You know, it is what it is. I definitely underestimated how difficult those shapes were going to be to make in the lower bit of the rear panel. But having said that, I did kind of enjoy the idea of the challenge, right? Now, the only successful welding that I've done in the past is where you overlap the patch, right? So you make the panel, you know, a couple of mil too big for the hole, essentially, and then you just weld it on, grind it back, and then you just use fiberglass and filler to smooth out, you know, the edge essentially where there's an overlap, right? But I went ahead and thought, yeah, I'll try and butt weld this very complicated shaped repair panel that wasn't made that great in to the rear panel, right? Now, some areas around the edge of the patch, you know, had a gap that was too big. Inevitably, I ended up burning holes. I then assumed that I needed to turn the heat and the speed down, you know, to prevent making holes. But ultimately, the reason I was making holes was because the gap was too big in between the panels. When there is too much of a gap, you can put like a bit of aluminium or a bit of copper behind, which can help you not blow holes. And when I added some welds onto Heidi's rear panel when I was around here yesterday, which is now underneath all that fiberglass, I did, you know, put a bit of copper behind where I could get it, which did help the situation. But ultimately, if the patch was the right size for the hole, or even better, if it was slightly overlapped so that you haven't got any hole between the panels, I would have done a way better job on the welding. Now, I can see where butt welding is, you know, definitely better than overlapping if you're able to do it so that you don't need to use a load of filler. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to try and do butt welding and then it's going to need a load of filler anyway, then I may as well just overlap the panels and then use fiberglass filler to hide that overlap, to get rid of the step. So in future, I'm just going to overlap the panels. You know, I'm going to stick to what I'm capable of doing and the welding will come out better. However, loads of you guys actually advised me to grab a tool, which means I'll be able to get the benefits of overlapping panels, i.e. I'll actually be able to do the welding without blowing holes and ruining it, but it will also give me the benefits of butt welding, i.e. having the job nice and flush. And I'm going to be using that tool to tackle this rust on Heidi's rear quarter panel. So fingers crossed, this welding goes a bit better than the last time. All right, so I've been sidetracked a bit, but it was a worthy cause because John's XR2 now idles on its own thanks to a little bit of investigating, it turned out that the idle control solenoid was faulty, but we did actually take the carb off and take it apart before we actually realised that it literally was just that solenoid. And yeah, John had a spare carb with a spare solenoid, and now he's a happy man.
Very.
Now it's time for MOT, yeah?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, now it's running sweet after a little bit of an MH tune after fitting the solenoid. In other news, here's a bit of a blast from the past. Mark II Escort RS2000 that belongs to DJ Rev. Ain't seen this thing for ages. Yeah, check this out. Mint pair of restored fishnets, all stripped out in the back. Yeah, this thing's been hibernating for many years, but now it's back out in action. Anyway, I really must crack on with Heidi. Got to get out of here in 2 hours because I've got boxing this evening. Once I'd marked how much metal I was going to remove, I put on some PPE and cut the metal out with my angle grinder. Inside, I found a load of sealer that's put on from the factory, as well as a ton of surface rust. I cleaned up this surface rust with a wire brush on a drill, and then I attacked the area with some rust converter. And while that was going off, I repeated the whole process for the driver's side rear quarter panel. All right, so that's both sides cut out, and as you can see, these inner bits are really rusty. The other one's actually got holes in it. I'll show you in a minute. And this is actually going to prevent me from doing this job how I wanted to. Let's give you a closer look at the other side. Yeah, look how rotten the inner bit is on this side. Really bad. I'm definitely not going to be cutting this out to replace it, but because this is like a water channel where any water goes in through the vent is supposed to run out here, I'm definitely going to have to slap some sealer or something on the back of this, which I can do before I weld it up. But yeah, no turning back now. We've got 2 huge holes in Heidi's rear quarter panels, but yeah, let me show you this tool that I've been banging on about. And it's actually something that loads of you guys got in touch to tell me to buy. All right, so this is kind of 2 tools in one, really. This top bit swivels around, and if you've got it this way round, it's like a hole punch. You can just see that bit there. And if you turn it this way round, it's what I think they call a joggler or a flange tool. Basically, you trap the metal in there and it puts a little flange on it. I've got a bit of scrap metal here to show you. This is the first time I've tried to use this, so let's see how it goes. So yeah, you put that in there and then squeeze it. Yeah, it's put like a little step in it. All right, well, this tool is junk. It's actually broke. Yeah, this little bit here, the threads have stripped, basically. So it doesn't really work. See if I've at least got a hole punch. Let's punch the hole, but now it's stuck on there. Yeah, so end up bending the metal to get it out. So this tool is absolute junk. Yeah, that's going to sort of change how I'm going to approach doing these rear quarters now. Shame, but there you go. All right, so that basically means I'll be reverting to plan A in terms of how I'm going to do this job, and I'm just going to make the plate a couple of mil bigger all the way round. And yeah, I'll just stitch it in, and then I'll use fiberglass and filler to make the shape. So let's make up some plates. I laid some thin card onto the quarter panel and rubbed round the edge of the hole to leave a mark, which I then drew over with a Sharpie. Once I'd repeated the process for the other side, I cut out both of my templates, which were roughly the same size as the holes in the quarter panel. I transferred the templates onto some metal, but made sure that I made the plates bigger than my templates because I was going to be overlapping the welding jobs. Next, I grabbed some Kent Europe seam sealer and threw a load over the holes that I found in the inner piece of the driver's side rear quarter panel. Admittedly, this is an utter bodge, but there was no way I was going to remove the quarter panel completely to replace that inner bit. Hello, into a new day, and I think I've changed my mind how I'm gonna approach this welding job. But before I get into that, I realise I forgot to tell you the third disaster that I had the day before yesterday, and it involves my welder, or more specifically, the gas for it. Loads of you guys have advised me to get the bigger gas bottles, and that's definitely something I'm thinking about doing at some point in the future. It's just space is a bit of an issue in my garages, which is the same reason why I don't follow your guys' advice about getting a gazebo to work out here when the weather isn't great. Anyway, about halfway through, when I was adding some welds to this rear panel, I ended up getting disturbed by a friend of mine, and I was chatting to him for about an hour and a half. And whilst we was having that chat, I still had the valve open on the gas bottle. Now, these gas bottles are about 1.5 times the price of the really small ones, but they have 3 times as much gas in them. But once I'd finished chatting to my mate for about an hour and a half, I ended up basically running out of gas when I went back on to welding the rear panel. So I can only assume that some of the gas must have escaped, you know, maybe through these joints or through the torch, because this valve was open. So I ended up wasting a whole one of the 2 of these bigger gas bottles that I bought. So yeah, not good. And yeah, another example of me wasting money on fuel that I didn't actually get to use. But yeah, I just need to remember that whenever I stop welding, even if it is just, you know, momentarily, I need to shut this valve back off. Right, so with regards to this welding, I think I'm going to be forced to try and butt weld this, which I'm really anxious about because, as I've already mentioned in this video, I don't want to try and butt weld anymore. But I just think that if I was to overlap this, now I would cut quite a lot of this, it wouldn't overlap quite as much as this, but I just think that especially with this corner up here, it's too close to this edge for me to be able to sort of, you know, lose the edge with fiberglass. Also, this vent thing here, obviously water can get in here and it's supposed to run out through a hole that is obviously missing now. So yeah, this is like part of the rain channel. So if I was to overlap this, there's going to be a gap between this bit of metal and this. So in theory, that will mean that if water does go in there, it'll end up in there, which is not good. So that's the 2 reasons why I think I'm going to have to butt weld this. Now I have got an idea that's going to make it a bit easier, but regardless, I'm going to need to make the plate exactly the same size as the hole. So that's the real challenge. I'm not going to trim this piece down just in case I end up reverting back to overlapping. So I'm actually going to cut out another couple of plates using the templates that I already made. Should be here. And yeah, fingers crossed I'm able to do this accurately. This time, when I cut the plates out, I made them only ever so slightly bigger than my templates. I was going to be cracking on with the driver's side first, so once I'd cleaned up around the hole in the car, I carefully kept trimming the plate until it fit in the hole in the car exactly. Well, not exactly, but I am no fabricator. I grabbed the weld-through primer from my friends at BODICRAFT in Watford and sprayed it inside the hole whilst I still had the opportunity. I cut out some strips of metal which I was going to use to create my own flange round the edge of the hole. I then drilled some MIG plug holes and filed the back of them to make sure that I could get my strips nice and flush. Then it was just a case of clamping the strips on and MIG plugging them to the edge of the hole. And then with my plate drilled, it meant I was going to be able to MIG plug my plate to the flange that I'd just created. I weld through primed the back of the plate and my new flange, and then set about welding my plate into place. Once I'd MIG plugged the holes up, I then added welds where the plate met the metal of the car. And once the welds were ground down, it was time to crack on with the other side. I managed to get the plate quite an accurate size for the hole, so I decided I was going to try and butt weld this one in. And it was going well until the gas ran out again. This was so frustrating. So much for these green bottles being filled with 3 times as much gas as the other ones. I decided to grind down the welds that I had managed to lay down before turning my attention back to the driver's side. I hit the welds with a wire brush on a drill, and then I drilled out the hole that's needed for the water to drain out of the vent. Admittedly, I drilled it a little bit too high, but I'll make it work. Then, after persuading a high spot down a bit with my persuader, I slapped a load of fiberglass filler over the welds. Whilst that was going off, I turned my attention to Heidi's rear panel. I used some 180 grit DA discs from Kent to sand down the fiberglass, and you can see that it's really taking shape now. Then I grabbed some 40 grit discs to sand down the fiberglass in the rear quarter panel before chucking another skim in. After some fine tuning with a sanding block, the rear panel got some epoxy primer, which helped me identify where I needed to put the filler next. And for this skim, I was going to be using the Kent Ultra Multi-Fiber, which is like filler mixed with fiberglass. Next came a whole load more sanding, and then the rear quarter got some Ultra Multi-Fiber, and eventually some normal filler. The next day I came to the garage armed with some more gas and dived straight into finishing the welding on the passenger side. I ended up blowing holes in one area, but with some copper placed behind the hole, I was able to rectify the situation. Once the welds were ground down, the repair looked pretty good, but was still going to need loads of filler. In went the fiberglass first, and then I turned the car round because the weather was looking iffy. I put a load of sealer inside the quarter panels behind both welding repairs, and then I spent hours and hours sanding and fillering both rear quarter panels. But I did find time to clean up and epoxy prime the C-pillars. Alright, well, this video has been a bit of a mission, but this bodywork stuff is really time consuming. Today, the weather is not playing ball. It keeps spitting with rain, and yeah, I think it's going to get worse in a minute. So I'm going to have to get this old banger back in the garage, and I've actually run out of time today anyway. I've got another boxing class tonight, so yeah, need to pack up and get out of here. But yeah, still loads of work to do on these rear quarters. This one is further along than the other side. And yeah, it's definitely taken shape, and we're down to the sort of normal filler stages with this now. I have actually run out of the normal filler, but I am waiting for another care package from my friends at Kent Europe. Around this side, it's in the sort of fiberglass and filler mix stage. So once this is knocked down, I'll be, you know, on to using the normal filler. And yeah, the rear panel is at a similar state. You know, it's only down to the normal filler now to get the final shapes. You can see that it's definitely taking shape. These edges are a bit sharp, and yeah, still plenty of work to do, but you can already see it's looking a million times better than it did. This side, yeah, again, I'll just need to use the normal filler to finish this, because this side was in a way better state than this side after I did the welding. But yeah, I'm going to come back round here and crack on with a load more filler work behind the scenes, and yeah, at some point this thing will be ready to go and have the proper 2-pack primer on it, and yeah, ultimately then eventually get painted. However, I am going to be taking a few steps back. I keep mentioning I've got these secret plans with the car, and in the next video that features Heidi, I'm going to show you those secret plans. Some of you are going to like them. A lot of you are probably not going to like them, but the project's going to take a different turn, you could say. And if I finish doing what I intend to with these secret plans, it's going to be a whole load of fun. So I'll give you one final look at how things are looking right now. And yeah, I need to get myself packed up and get out of here. The rain is actually starting to get a bit heavier. Before I go though, my company Petrolhead Style is soon going to be releasing the Pinto Power and Pushrod Power collections of clothing and other cool products. And this month, like every other month, we're doing a competition where one of you is going to win a free product. And this month, it's going to be a t-shirt of your choice. All you need to do to be in the draw for the competition and all future competitions is join up to the mailing list at www.petrolheadstyle.com. And once you're joined up to the mailing list, you'll be notified of all new products when they're released, such as the Pinto Power and Pushrod Power collections that are upcoming, and you'll benefit from discount codes that we regularly send out to our mailing list subscribers. So head over to petrolheadstyle.com, get yourself on the mailing list, and while you're there, check out all the cool car-themed products that we've got on offer. So with that being said, I need to end this video here. Massive thanks, as always, to everyone who's tuned in. watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Feel free to follow me on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram. I'll leave the links to that in the description, along with my email address for anyone who wants to contact me. I'll leave a link to my website down there and the Petrolhead Style website as well. Massive thanks as always to my patrons for your ongoing support. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.